helps if you put the spanner on.
When Brooklands first opened as a racetrack in 1907, the roar of the cars was soon followed by the whir of propellers. As an aerodrome was quickly carved out in the centre of the circuit just a year later. Fly-ins would regularly take place on track days between races to entertain the crowds. By 1911, the world's first flight ticket office was built to offer recreational flights to members of the public. Today, the museum is keen to maintain its aeronautical heritage by not only looking after a whole catalogue of legendary planes.
OK, I think she's free.
OK, Paul, Andy, should we move on to the next one?
It's looking good, looking good.
But also to keep these vintage aircraft up in the air, just as they did in their heyday.
At the moment, I'm standing in semi-sunshine.
Museum trustee Geoff Want has a longer association with this place than most.
My involvement with the museums goes back to 50 years. I came here as an apprentice when I left school in 1970 and was taken on by the then British Aircraft Corporation, but I then went on and joined British Airways and spent 30-odd years with them. So I've had a job which is a hobby and a hobby which is a job. Today we're supposed to be having a fly-in to the airstrip here at Brooklands with the intention of testing out the runway because a new surface was laid early on in the year.
The previous grass runway was ravaged by rabbits, who dug up the surface, making it dangerous for planes to take off and land. To try and rectify the problem, a new runway has been laid made up of plastic mesh, but the new surface has to be tested before any public fly-ins can take place. So Geoff has arranged for some experienced Brooklands pilots to land here today to see how safe it is. But the great British weather may be about to ruin months of hard work and planning.
We're unclear at the moment as to whether the air flying will go ahead. Late yesterday afternoon, the weather forecast deteriorated.
With pilots and their planes coming from far and wide, the blanket of cloud across the whole of England is already causing problems.
Hello, Martin.
Hi, Geoff. So not all the pilots have rung in.
OK.
3 of them have cancelled.
Right. Even if we get 2 in, that will be a positive, and we've got the marshallers and everybody tested out.
50 miles away in Hungerford, experienced pilot Tim Williams is getting his unique 1930 Puss Moth flight ready in case the weather improves.
And I suppose I started flying when I was a little lad and little wind-up aeroplanes. As I got older, the aeroplanes got bigger, and eventually they were big enough for me to get inside. So, and here I am just at a great old age and thinking, well, maybe there's got to kind of come a time when I can't do it anymore. But that's not quite yet. It's a single-engine monoplane. It's got a 145 horsepower engine in the front of it.
Many of the pioneering pilots at the turn of the century, such as Amy Johnson, flew Puss Moths. Amy Johnson was the first woman to fly solo from England to Australia. Of the 259 Puss Moths that were built, only 2 are still flying in the UK, and it's not surprising given the lack of technology on board.
The trouble is with these old aeroplanes, you can really only go where you can see, and if you can't see, you can't go. The cloud base, as forecast at the moment, is below 1,000 feet between here and Brooklands. You're getting down into areas where you're pretty close to the ground, really. I'm just checking the oil level here, and it's full to the top, so that's jolly good. It's an interesting situation at the moment with the weather because I can see the windsock there, which is almost stationary, and I can see over there those hills, which are probably 4 miles away, and I can just see the top of them, but there's a lot of haze in between. So flying in those circumstances is going to be quite difficult because I can't go much higher than that. I'll be flying around over lots of buildings, and it's something that, you know, if something happens and I can't see where I'm going, then I'm in real trouble. But I'm not happy at the moment about going over to Brooklands. It's not really flyable, so fingers crossed that this murk disappears.
With Tim unable even to take off.
So we're sliding the whole programme back, and fingers crossed.
Testing the new runway may be a washout before it even starts.
OK, good morning, everybody. Thank you for bearing with us.
Museum trustee Geoff and his team are anxiously waiting for the weather to clear so their planned fly-in can go ahead. It's essential that the recently resurfaced runway is put to the test by experienced pilots before they can plan further events for the public to attend.
At the moment, the situation is we have possibly 3 aircraft coming. That's Tim Williams in his Puss Moth, the Piper Cub, and also the Tiger Moth. Brooklands has a history of aviation and motoring. It's relatively easy to do the motoring side and keep it a living museum, having cars demonstrating that type of thing. To do the same with aviation is difficult. Just to remind you, one of the purposes for doing this is to trial out the new runway surface. Obviously, safety is paramount.
Before any planes can land, Geoff and his team need to inspect the new runway to ensure the safety of the pilots and their precious planes.
The last thing aeroplanes want to do is hit anything, so they are looking to pick up any small pieces of debris, pieces of paper, bits of metal, anything which may have been left which would cause damage to an aircraft if it were to hit it. We'll just walk it very carefully and slowly the whole length, and then walk back again, and then we'll be able to declare that the runway's safe for use.
The runway may be clear of debris, but with the surface having never been tested by landing planes, there's one team of volunteers at today's fly-in that are all too aware of the potential dangers ahead.
We are providing rescue and firefighting services to the airstrip. We're all volunteers, most of us are full-time firefighters. We come in for the Brooklands events and the fly-ins just to provide fire cover should the worst happen.
Some of these planes that are coming in are basically made of paper mache, so when they come down, they're going to come down really hard. We need to be there really fast.
Unfortunately, in our day jobs, we have seen the aftermath of aircraft accidents. We see the aftermath where, none of us are keen flyers.
And it looks like Geoff's event may be going ahead, as Puss Moth pilot Tim updates on his flight plans.
Right, so you're talking about getting airborne and seeing how it goes. I'm hopeful. All right.
All right, Geoff. Super. Bye then. Bye. What I've told them is that if the weather clamps in somewhere between here and Brooklands, I'm just turning around and coming back.
But first, this legendary 90-year-old plane needs to be started, a process which isn't without its own dangers.
You had to be careful not to put your head in line. That's why I'm holding on to this bit here, so that I don't trip over and slip on the grass and end up underneath the propeller.
With the majestic engine roaring, its propellers can power the craft into the sky. A privilege only experienced by those lucky enough to pilot these fantastic flying machines. With Tim finally airborne, the Brooklands team can only hope the weather holds long enough for the Moth to land and test their new runway.
Heathrow is saying cloud base scattered at 1200 and broken at 2300.
At the fly-in, Geoff is facing a nervous wait to see if any of the vintage planes he's arranged to test his new runway are actually going to make it. Of the 8 planned, only 3 have managed to take off from different parts of the country. If the weather's bad en route, they'll have to turn around and head back, and months of planning and preparation will have gone to waste.
The weather's clearly improving in the area. A couple of aircraft are in the air en route, so fingers crossed. It's aviation, that's what happens, but dependent on the weather, and these are very old aircraft.
Just caution the boundary of the LFA a couple of miles to the north.
Martin Hill has one of the most important jobs on the ground today.
I am a retired air traffic controller. Today I'm providing an air-ground communication service. The strip is very short. It's only 400 metres long, and it has trees at one end and a building at the other.
It's now a waiting game to see if any of the precious planes and their pilots will be able to land. Tim is finally spotted on the horizon.
Brooklands radio all stations. The first arrival, Golf Alpha Alpha Zulu Papa, is just positioning downwind.
But his approach is too high for the treacherously short runway.
Left down a bit short, I think I'll go round again.
Go super.
After circling round for a second approach, he needs to hit the new runway with pinpoint precision, otherwise he could end up in the trees.
Tim's just about to land. Yeah, about here he is, hang on.
Golf Super Cub, no reported traffic, the wind is indicating light and variable.
Just watching him coming, he's just side-slipping in now.
But a dangerously strong side wind is threatening to blow him off course.
Coming in on 19, looking good.
He's landed, but the smooth new surface makes it harder to slow down.
He's down. He's down.
Really good this strip now, this end.
Lovely to see him in.
Yeah.
It was a nice approach.
With Tim safe and sound on the ground, he can give his verdict on Geoff's new landing surface.
My strip's about the same length as this, but of course it didn't have lampposts at the end either. You wouldn't want to do it in a fast aeroplane, you'd be pretty tricky. Well, I came over the hedge at about 55 knots.
Well done, Tim. That was interesting. Little gust at the end, wasn't it?
Well, yes.
All stations, Brooklands radio, another arrival.
It seems vintage aircraft are a bit like buses.
Stand around for an hour and nothing happens and two of them are on the run.
Despite the weather, two more vintage aircraft have finally made it. First in is a spectacular 1960s Piper Cub.
Well, thanks, Rick. So the other traffic is now on the ground.
The next plane, which is a Tiger Moth, has got no brakes. and he's an ex-jet jockey, so he's a high-speed man. So we'll see how he gets on.
With Tim already overrunning the runway with brakes, landing and stopping in time in this vintage Tiger Moth is a true test of the new runway surface.
Well, this is a very gentlemanly approach.
It is, yes.
Okay, just landed, here we are.
Nigel is the proud pilot of the 1960s Piper Super Cub.
Really good, and it was wonderfully smooth. It made a tremendous difference.
And Robin and Joe in the historic Tiger Moth, which relies on drag to come to standstill.
It's a very, very much nicer surface. However, what it does is it doesn't allow you to stop quite as quickly. This airplane does not have brakes. So it's got a skid, it's a metal skid in the back, and it tends to slide a little bit on this surface.
That was my first landing in a Tiger Moth, and 45 knots, steep field, short runway. It's quite a first, really. The day job is flying a 737 for a UK airline. So yeah, this is really back to basics flying, and what a beautiful day for it now it's turned out to be.
The fly-in has been a success so far, but the final test will come when these vintage aircraft try to take off again.
Good hosts, lovely hosts, very helpful.
Sandwiches very tasty.
At the airfield, the test pilots of Geoff's new runway are preparing to take off and leave.
The new new surface here that's made it smoother. World of differences.
Really, it does make such a difference, but it takes a lot longer to stop.
It does, doesn't it?
I think we all got a little bit closer to the end than we were expecting.
Yes.
Well, I did.
Okay, thank you all very much for coming.
Not dangerous if you know what you're doing. Now, the technique is to keep away from it. Sometimes it takes a while.
See those three aircraft fly off like that is a real joy. So overall, fantastic day, and pleased to do it, and showing that Brooklands can organise fly-ins again, and we're well set up to do that next year.
You know, we're not just a load of static exhibits.